Pretty much no Terminator film since Terminator 2 Judgment Day has been well received by audiences, and for good reason. Oh no! Titties! So, to try and distance itself from those last few not-so-great installments of the Terminator franchise, Terminator Dark Fate completely disregards them, acting as a direct sequel to Terminator 2. Distancing themselves from previous worse films like this would have been a great idea, if this film was any good. But as it stands, it's kind of like trying to persuade a significant other you've just cheated on that you've changed as they're watching you just ram your neighbor into the mattress. That's what this is. Stop fucking my neighbor, Terminator franchise. You're just as bad as you were before. I digress. Dark Fate takes the formula of the first two Terminator films. A Terminator is sent back in time to kill a target, and someone else is sent back in time to protect them from that Terminator. It's a tale as old as time. But while Terminator 1 and 2 have well-written characters, plots that make sense, and themes that don't collapse in on themselves, Dark Fate does none of the above while taking a massive dump on those two films it's trying desperately to associate itself with. Let's fucking elaborate, eh? The film opens with some narration from Sarah Connor.
There once was a future in which humankind was hunted by a machine that could think. That future never happened because I stopped it.
Referencing the fact that she helped stop the machine uprising. We then get a short scene where Sarah and John Connor are just sort of chilling out on a beach. This scene appears to be set directly after the events of T2. This is what happens almost immediately after that whole movie about saving John's life. John gets shot 3 times in the chest by a new... What the... John gets shot 3 times in the chest by a new T-800 we haven't seen before, and dies. I would just like to make clear, this isn't a joke. I kind of said it like a joke the first time I said it. This isn't a joke, this is what happens in the film. There are 2 main things that happen in Terminator 2, 2 main objectives that our main characters have. The first is to keep John alive from a Terminator that's hunting him. This is the central premise of the film. Sarah and the reprogrammed T-800 trying to keep John safe. That's not all they achieve along the way. They also manage to halt the research that would lead to creating Skynet, which is the evil AI that otherwise would have destroyed the world in 1997. You know, just in case you're not a Terminator fan, but are watching this anyway for some reason. This all ties into a big theme of Terminator 2, choosing your own fate. See, I'm going to put those words in big letters on the screen right now. They're important. Look, there they are. In Terminator 2, Sarah and John Connor know that the world ends in 1997. That's essentially their fate. But since it's not 1997 yet, they do their best to change that. They choose their own fate. This is played off as one of the film's central ideas, that your fate isn't determined and you can choose it for yourself.
That future never happened because I stopped it.
So the opening narration here is good and in keeping with Terminator 2. However, killing John is the polar opposite of this. They immediately undo one of the core victories of the previous film because it's simply inconvenient to the story they want to tell, kinda spitting in the face of that film that loads of people love. This is especially insulting considering the story they want to tell is just this story again, but worse. But hey, at least Sarah still got to choose her own fate, right? There definitely aren't still more Terminators now, even though she stopped it all. Oh, we'll get to that.
So I was so proud. I was like, you know, I'm part of this, so yes. This is cool.
You must have been like, oh my god, I'm in a Terminator film. Because I would have been if I'd got the role. Like, just even as someone dying in the background, like the happiest person dead. Yeah, just kill me, just stab me.
Man, if I was in this film, I'd be saying something pretty similar. After this opening, we get introduced to a couple of our principal characters. First, we meet the protector of the Target Terminator Protector trio. Her name is Grace, and she has intense top energy. She does the usual routine of stealing someone's clothes and vehicle before we cut to the introduction of our next character, the target, Danny. We learn that she is Mexican, and nice. We also meet her father and brother so they can both be killed by a Terminator in a few minutes. And last but not least, we're introduced to the Terminator of the trio. A Terminator, who time travels in and starts his hunt for Danny. These introductions are done fine enough. We learn everything we need to for the time being about these characters. Like, you know, being Mexican and nice, for example, or that Grace is aggressive and really, really good in a fight. That's kind of as deep as her character ends up going, actually. I'm not saying that those are her only character traits, but they are about as deep as her character traits get. So our premise is now mostly set up. Grace, a cyborg, needs to protect Danny, normal person from this semi-liquid metal Terminator. He's made of liquid metal, but he's still got a Terminator skeleton body on the inside, and they can split into two if they need to, because whoa, gimmick. The film will use this gimmick when it can actually think of something cool to do with it, but will also ignore the fact that this gimmick exists whenever it's inconvenient to the plot. There are multiple instances in this film where the Terminator splitting into two, like it clearly can, because that's like the whole gimmick, would be a really useful thing for it to do, but it just chooses not to because, hey, the plot needs the main characters to be able to escape it for a while. And things of that nature. Also, when you see the skeleton that goes under the liquid metal, the teeth of the skeleton are black. Do you guys not know why these things have teeth? It's so they look like teeth! Danny and her brother arrive at the factory in which they work to find that the brother's workstation is taken up by a machine, which is automating his job. Hey, that's thematically linked to the events of this film in an entirely superficial way. Someone else tells the brother that his boss wants to see him. It's implied that this is because he's being laid off. Apparently, he's being made redundant by a machine that they've installed, and is finding out about this by coming into work and just finding a machine at his workstation. Yeah, okay. Before too long, the semi-liquid metal Terminator, that's quite a mouthful, isn't it? You know what? I'll just call him the Semi. Before too long, the Semi finds Danny at her workplace, but Grace has also found Danny, so an action scene between the two ensues. They can't kill the Semi and decide to run from it, at which point we get a car chase. The car chase ends with Danny's brother being killed, and Sarah Connor finding the situation. Whoa, I can't wait to see what Sarah Connor's like now. She arrives at the scene with a load of military-grade artillery and just unloads on this new Terminator. She also says, "I'll be back."
I'll be back.
Whoa, that's a line from a good film. I remember good films. So far, all we've really had is an action set piece and everything that needs to be established. We've also had some fan service, which is a bit wank.
I'll be back.
Also the slow motion action scenes that are like, whoa, look how cool this is, whoa, do make me question things as well. But I can't really fault them on anything technical. I just don't like them, so I'm gonna leave it at that. There are much bigger fish to fry in this film than these action scenes, and it certainly goes downhill from here. Since the truck that Grace and Danny escaped in just blew up, they steal Sarah's truck to escape, and Sarah's like, wah! That's the noise she actually makes in the film. At this point, the film takes some time out to explain something that's wrong with Grace. So we already know that Grace is a cyborg, and apparently she has tuned her metabolism to be extremely high, because she believes that she'll either stop the Terminator in the first 5 minutes, or won't be able to stop it at all. But since the first 5 minutes are now up, she's burning up, she's incredibly sick, and she desperately needs water and medication, and will continue to need constant medication for the rest of the film. There's no payoff to this, and it contributes nothing to the story. They rob a pharmacy to get the medication that Grace needs, and then she just has that medication for the rest of the story. In fact, she even keeps it in situations where it wouldn't make sense for her to, because the film needs her to have it now. There's a scene later on where they're trying to get into the USA and they all get arrested by Border Patrol. They all get searched and their personal belongings confiscated, except Grace gets to keep her 2 syringes of medication, just because the plot needed her to. In fact, when it's revealed that she still has them, a character who's present goes, "Wow, they didn't search you very well, did they? Wow, it sure is convenient that she didn't get the one thing she needs to stay alive taken away." There are multiple contrivances like this in the film so that she gets to keep her medication, and it just makes you wonder, why is this in the film in the first place? It doesn't contribute anything to the story. In fact, it detracts from it. The excuse we're given for this plotline is also really flimsy. Grace said she had to tune her metabolism to be super high because you either stop a Terminator in the first 5 minutes or you don't stop it at all. But that's not true. This film is in continuity with Terminator 1 and Terminator 2, and in both of those films it takes them ages to defeat their respective Terminator. Also, it takes them ages in this film. We've never seen a Terminator defeated in the first 5 minutes. So here we have some bad writing to justify something that doesn't contribute anything to the story, and in fact detracts from it later because they need to add some more bad writing to keep it in the story. Why is it here? Anyway, after they've robbed the pharmacy and get Grace the medication she needs so the rest of the story can be unaffected by it, they're found by Sarah Connor. Grace has now passed out because she hasn't had the medication yet, and Sarah drives Grace and Danny away. Sarah takes them to a motel where she gives Grace all of the different medications that she bought. Grace is still unconscious, and Sarah doesn't know how much of each medication to give her, so she just guesses random amounts. And this works, because this plotline needed to make less sense and be more pointless. No, for real, why is this plotline introduced if every time it causes a complication in the story, they're just going to hand wave away that complication and just brush over it so they can move on to something else. This is also where Sarah Connor starts to get characterized, and I really, really don't like the fact that I have to say this. She is shit. She's so shit in this film. There are a couple of moments here I'd like to note specifically. Dani is obviously upset that her dad and brother are now dead, and is crying about how she never got to say goodbye and probably won't get to go to their funerals. Sarah tells her that the funeral won't help them and saying goodbye won't help you. This is supposed to seem like it would be comforting to Dani, and I think sound a bit deep, but it doesn't, because all it implies is that the funeral would help you, and saying goodbye would help them. But hey, the line sure does sound deep. Hearing this line is like hearing someone say, "You don't need a pizza cutter or a spoon, because you can't use a pizza cutter to eat soup, and you can't use a spoon to cut pizza," while they're insisting to you that they're being clever. Sarah also tells Dani that she just needs to learn to live with it. Obviously, thanks to the beginning of this movie, Sarah has some experience with losing loved ones. And her saying that you just need to learn to live with it implies that she's learnt to live with it, you know? But for the rest of the film, all of the characterization we get for Sarah makes it seem like the fact she lost John fuels her every action. So she says you've just got to learn to live with it, but what she means by that apparently is you've just got to let it consume your entire life. Now, I don't take issue with the idea itself of this consuming Sarah's entire life, but the devil is in the detail, and they execute this with about the subtlety of a hammer to the dick. So Sarah mentions Skynet and is relieved to hear that Grace and Dani have never heard of Skynet.
We changed the future. Saved 3 billion lives.
Apparently she still thinks she saved the entire future when she can see that there are still Terminators being sent back in time. Surely Sarah should be worried about this. It absolutely implies that the war with the machines still happens in the future. But nah, it doesn't seem like that's something Sarah Connor would be concerned about. I don't think she's ever really cared about stopping that future. So she just brushes straight on past this and goes into how the death of John has affected her. She recounts the events of the beginning of this film and says, "Since then, I hunt Terminators, and I drink until I black out." This means that she is traumatized. I bring this up because it's basically the perfect example of how she's characterized through this whole movie. In Terminator 2, Sarah's actions, her character, are shaped by the events of the previous film and the trauma she experienced in it. It takes us to a point where she's trying to shoot an innocent man in front of his family, and we totally buy that she got to that point because her trauma has been so realistically portrayed. Now, almost every part of her personality is a result of the fact that she knows the world is going to end soon. We see how draining that is for her and her terror of the future. In Terminator Dark Fate, she says she drinks, and this means she has problems. Now, one thing that may be on your mind is, if it's now canon in Terminator 2, Sarah Connor stopped Judgment Day, she stopped the future where Skynet took over?
That future never happened. Because I stopped it.
If that's the case, where are these new Terminators coming from? If the future where humanity went to war with machines didn't happen, who's building the machines that look almost exactly like the ones from that future? And who's sending them back to kill people? Well, Sarah Connor did manage to stop Skynet, a military AI that launched the world's nukes and went to war with humanity. So instead of that, what happens in the future is a military AI called Legion launches the world's nukes and goes to war with humanity. This is not different. What a middle finger to Terminator 2 this film is. First it kills John, which we've already been over, but then it completely demolishes the idea that you can choose your own fate, that fate is what you make of it. In Terminator 2, Sarah Connor was trying to make her fate one in which the world didn't get destroyed by robots and her son was alive. Now this film is standing here squarely in contradiction of the idea that you can choose your own fate, essentially suggesting that whatever you do, the war with the machines is going to come no matter what. Which is true, because the war with the machines is what makes Hollywood executives money. Anyway, our trio of leading ladies is now on the road, and since Sarah hasn't bothered to ask Grace who actually sent this Terminator, Dani has to. Because, you know, I guess Sarah just doesn't care about the war against the machines anymore. It's not like Terminator 2 exists! It's at this point that Grace explains what Legion is, in that it's literally just Skynet, but it's called Legion. Sarah's reaction to finding out that Judgment Day still happens just at a later date, when she finds out the thing that had caused her trauma for so many years has still happened when she thought she'd stopped it, she goes, "Ugh, those assholes never learn." And that's all she has to say on the matter. This is so far out of character for Sarah Connor that I can't even begin to describe it.
They fly apart like leaves.
Dreams at the end of the world are very common.
It's not a dream anymore, it's real.
Sure, it feels very real to you.
On August 29th, 1997, it's gonna feel pretty fucking real to you too.
As soon as she found out that there were still Terminators being sent back from the future, the first thing she would have done is try to find out why and where they're coming from and who's sending them. She should have been grilling Grace and Danny about this at her first opportunity, desperate to find out what had happened. Remind me, what does she say to them again?
I'll be back.
Oh, cool! That line is in other films. Hey, yeah. What's trauma? But no, she just doesn't bother to ask and actually has to wait for someone else to ask instead so that she can find out as well. And then when she actually does find out, she's just like, ugh, that sucks. This would be a major underreaction from literally anyone learning that the world is going to end soon, let alone from Sarah Connor, whose entire personality was shaped by her fear of this for years.
Yeah, just kill me, just stab me.
It's at this point we also learn that Sarah gets regular texts telling her whenever anyone time travels. These texts always end in the words, "for John," and lead her to a Terminator that she can kill. However, we later find out that the person sending these texts only knows when someone time travels and where they time travel to. So Sarah should have shown up at either the location Grace time traveled to, or the location the Semi time traveled to. But she was able to find them at the end of their car chase on the bridge, and then found them again after they drove away from her to rob a pharmacy. She had no way of knowing where they were either time, so this is just a plot hole. But the group decides to go to the coordinates that these texts are being sent from. You know, maybe they can get some help from there. But these coordinates are in the USA, and none of the three of them have a legal way to get in, so they need to smuggle themselves across the border. Sarah absolutely should have a way to get into the USA, because she could be called upon by these texts to go to the USA at any given time, but she just doesn't. So they go to a contact of Danny's who has a way to smuggle them in. On the way, Danny finally thinks to ask, "Why me? Why am I being targeted by these Terminators?" And in response to this, we get one of the most obvious setups for a subversion ever. Danny is convinced that there's no reason anyone would want to kill her. She's not special. Sarah Connor then says, "Let me guess. She gives birth to the man who saves us all." Danny says, "But I'm nothing. I'm nobody." And Sarah Connor agrees with her and says, "Yeah, you're not the threat. It's your womb." First of all, for this scene, Sarah may as well have been holding up a sign that says, "I'm gonna be proved wrong by the end of the film." We're at a midpoint now and one of the main characters who's done nothing wrong is being berated with, "Oh, well, yeah, you're not special, are you? You're just gonna give birth to some man and he's gonna be special." Sarah also has no reason to assume this. Yeah, a Terminator did once try to kill her because she's the mother of John Connor, but even in that situation, it wasn't just her womb that was important, it was her guidance. She shaped John into the man he would become. The film here, not Sarah, the film is deliberately downplaying Sarah's role in the previous films to prop itself up. But then in Terminator 2, a Terminator came after John himself. Pretty sure his threat wasn't his womb, so in Sarah's experience, she has seen the target targeted directly or the target's parent be targeted. The only reason that she has to assume that Danny is the parent of a target is so that the film can subvert that and go, "Whoa, no, actually Danny is special." Not only that, there's also an annoying gendered element to this. Sarah Connor assumes that it's going to be a man who's the special person, and really the only reason that she assumes this is so that she can be proven wrong later. The film makes Sarah Connor a sexist who assumes that the special person must be a man, just so that it can prove her wrong and have an anti-sexism message in it later. Thanks, film. I really wanted you to turn Sarah Connor sexist so that you could remind me that sexism is bad. Terminator Dark Fate was the last straw. I have decided to no longer continue to respect women. I have had 20 good years to respect women, but women have now been in too many bad films. I will no longer support women. This is exactly the kind of post I was referring to the other day. Dude, if you can't handle films that are putting women at the forefront when we've had almost a century of films with leading men, you really need either serious help or to get laid or both. Aw, you sure showed me for that joke. Just gonna go have sex so that I can learn to appreciate films that don't have men in them. Once they arrive at Danny's contact, we get a scene. I can only assume the scene is someone's magnum opus. It is... This scene is not supposed to be funny, but I have not laughed this hard in a cinema in as long as I can remember. It was a struggle controlling my laughter out of consideration for the other 3 people in the cinema. I saw this like the day after it came out, if you're wondering. Danny's contact is concerned that they're only asking him to be smuggled across because they're criminals. They've done something illegal, and that's why they need to get into the USA under the radar. Danny's immediate reaction is to just straight up tell this guy the truth. Oh, we're being hunted by a robot from the future, which of course this guy doesn't believe. Until Grace uses a knife to cut a fly in half in slow motion, and this convinces him, oh, she must be from the future. She cut a fly in half. Of course, realistically, he would have been like, what, hang on, there was a fly? Where was the fly? But of course, realistically, if they were trying to convince him that they were from the future, why doesn't Grace just show her the wounds that she already has that reveal her cyborg innards? No, that would make sense. Almost as much sense as Danny just coming up with some lie so that she can get through. She cuts the fly in half. There's like a swoosh ninja sound effect. And it's... I question everything. The scene is great. Watch this film just for the scene. Actually, don't reward this film with your money. After this film is like free somewhere and you see it in a bargain bin, pick it up just for this scene. That's my advice. So this works to get them smuggled across the border, but unfortunately for our heroes, they get caught along the way and are detained by Border Patrol. This is the point where Grace just gets to keep her medication because the plot needs her to. This part of the movie continues to be bad in just the ways that it already has been. The Semi tracks them down to this facility and tries to kill them, but they escape in a chopper. That was awful, I'm going to put that in. They finally get to the USA and get to the person who was sending Sarah the texts. It's a T-800, the same one that killed John at the beginning of the film. Apparently when he shot and killed a child in a public place with several witnesses, he just wasn't caught, even though he'd finished his mission and had no reason to evade the police whatsoever. We learn that since he finished his mission, he was without purpose, and so he decided to make his own purpose, and for him, that was building a family. Because fuck it, why not? The Deathbot, after it killed someone, decided, I'll just live a normal human life. Because that's how software works. When it finishes its task, it decides on something else to do. Of course, the only reason he's here is that someone somewhere thinks you can't have a Terminator movie without Arnold Schwarzenegger, so they just forced him in, even though he doesn't really fit. The movie makes a great effort to make this version of the T-800 the most sympathetic character ever, as we learn that since he's killed John, he's basically only been selfless, caring for a woman and child who really needed his care. He's now also on the side of our heroes for no reason. They may as well and probably should have given the excuse that some scientist found him and reprogrammed him, because that would make a lot more sense than he just developed a nice personality because the film needed him to. Basically, no aspect of this guy being here makes any sense whatsoever. Sarah, of course, really hates him because he killed John. This is, of course, an understandable character motivation, but it's done with about the same level of subtlety and nuance as before. Basically, every line of dialogue she says to him is just her saying something along the lines of, "Fuck you, you killed John, you big metal bastard." They even make her stupid and irrational in service of this. For example, there's a moment where the Terminator is talking about his family, and Sarah Connor goes, "He's lying! He's an infiltrator!" She believes that everything he's saying is part of some kind of ruse to achieve some kind of objective. However, Sarah Connor knows for a fact that this isn't really true. She knows for a fact that this Terminator has completed its mission and that Skynet literally doesn't exist anymore. There's no way that it can have new orders. She also knows that for a long time it's been sending her texts to help her kill other Terminators, yet still thinks it's lying about having a family so that it can achieve... something. There is no reason for her to believe it has any kind of goal beyond what it had before and has already achieved. It only makes sense that Sarah would be emotional when she confronts the machine that killed John. However, despite all she's been through before, her emotions have never made her irrational until now. Her emotions have been a driving force of her character, but they've always driven her to do rational things. Her fear of Judgment Day and of Skynet drove her to try and kill an innocent man, Miles Dyson. But this could have worked. If she had actually killed him, that might have been enough to stop the rise of Skynet. But this film seemingly can't think of a way to show that she's angry at this Terminator that killed her son without making her stupid, so now she's stupid. Thanks film, you made Sarah Connor stupid. Shortly after this we have a training scene for Danny where she learns to shoot guns. Again, the movie fails to understand human emotions here. It also doesn't understand how skills work. We see the T-800 setting up a load of professional shooting targets before we cut to Danny shooting at a watermelon on a stump. She's missing every shot because, well, shooting guns just isn't a skill she has. After Danny has missed a few shots with a pistol, Sarah brings her a much larger weapon. She whispers in Danny's ear, "A Terminator has just killed your whole family. What do you do?" Which, may I remind you, is true. A Terminator has just killed her whole family. Danny then proceeds to one-shot both of the melons. Yes, film, this is how humans work. remind them of a recent traumatic experience, and they'll suddenly develop new skills. Hey, maybe if I reminded you of a recent trauma, you'd develop some basic creative writing skills. It's at this point that the movie sort of devolves into its final form, just repeatedly finding excuses to have another action set piece, and then another one, and then another one, and then another one. In Terminator 2, the action that was there needed to happen to facilitate the story. It happened as a natural and logical result of the conflicting goals of the different characters. Terminator Dark Fate feels like it's trying to find excuses to have cool action-y things happen. Now don't get me wrong, I love cool action-y things, but it's the story that gets me invested in them. But this story literally is just the same story as Terminator 1 and 2, but instead of well-written characters and their motivations pushing the plot forward, the story is progressed by people cutting flies in half. It's in all of this mess of action at the end of the film that we finally get the reveal that, are you ready for this? Danny is the special person, not some man she gives birth to. Are you surprised? The reveal comes in the form of Grace just telling Danny that she is the special person, before we get a flash forward or a flashback from Grace's perspective of Danny doing some heroics in the future. It's at this point she gives a heroic speech which is clearly supposed to encapsulate the theme of this film. She's talking to someone who believes it's impossible for them to defeat Skynet, Legion, to which Danny says, "Are we just supposed to lie down and die because some machine decided it? Is that our fate? Yeah? Well, fuck fate." She puts about as much emotion into it as I did then. She really doesn't act this scene well. Apparently this film is still trying to give a message of fate is what you make of it. You choose your own fate. In fact, many of the posters for this film literally have choose your fate written on them as a tagline. They clearly want their film to have this theme, while squarely contradicting that message with most of the events that happen in it. The fact that Skynet was defeated and just got replaced by Legion, something that's literally the exact same, just after a rebrand, essentially conveys a theme of whatever you do, this fate is inescapable, which is literally the antithesis of the theme they're going for. This should be especially pertinent to Danny, who's delivering the speech. In the events of this film, not only did she learn everything that I just told you and presumably came to the assumption that a war with the machines is inevitable, she also knew about the war with the machines before it happened, but is now standing in the middle of that war so clearly wasn't able to stop it. If anyone in the entire world has reason to believe that your fate is just inevitable and whatever you do you can't change it, it's Danny. So in short, nice message movie, nice theme, but you contradicted it with most of the things that happen in you. The film is trying to have a nice inspirational message while accidentally delivering the nihilistic message of we're all fucked, whatever we do. The film finally ends with the Semi being killed, because of course it does, and thus an end is put to my suffering. Also a couple of characters die or something, I don't really care. The moments are supposed to have meaning, but since all the characterization leading up to it is fucked, they just don't. But what a bad film. It fails to have a cohesive plot with holes in basically anywhere you can find them. It fails to competently write characters or human emotions, completely obliterates Sarah Connor, and has a theme that collapses in on itself. Now, unfortunately, to close off this video, I'm gonna have to make the obvious joke. It seems like the Terminator franchise is doomed to a dark fate. Whoa!